this next writer always struck me as the quiet type until he came back from traveling Europe this summer with a full-blown beard, one that is not unlumberjack in style. I pride myself as an honorary Washingtonian. You can ask me about that afterwards if you want. So this would be a point of connection for me and our last prose writer of the night, coming to us from Lake Stevens, Washington, as reflected in his license plates, despite having lived in Las Vegas for 3 years. Let's welcome up Jack Stillwell.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you all for coming out tonight. And I would like to start by saying I am incredibly grateful for the last 3 years. Incredibly grateful to get to know all of you who I have met. There are quite a few people here who I haven't met. I'm sure you are all lovely as well. This is not from my thesis. I hope that's allowed. It's also one of the only things I've written that does not take place in Washington. I'll read the first 3 pages of this story I'm working on. It's called Champ Camp. Before the plane touched down in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I thought that if we crashed, I'd at least not have to spend the next 3 weeks at wrestling camp. The old fat guy in the seat next to me peeled his face from the window and asked if I wanted to see 3 Mile Island. I put my head in my hands, and soon enough we landed. In the airport, I wondered if I turned back and told the ticketing counter, hey, this whole thing is a mistake. Please send me back, if they would. I was young enough, 14, and looked more like 11 or 12, that maybe they'd be concerned. The whole flight over, I'd been thinking of ways out. Hitchhiking, pretending to be sick, leaving some food out for a few days and then eating it so I could actually get sick. But I was also getting to the point that I was uncontrollably aware of the things I would do and the things I wouldn't do, and imagining anything usually just led to me liking myself less. If I'd flown all the way across the country for some wrestling camp I didn't even want to go to in the first place, there was no way I had the conviction to back out of it. I was supposed to meet a bunch of other wrestlers who were flying in somewhere around baggage claim. They weren't hard to find. They were all sulking like a bunch of cows under an ad for some local dentist or lawyer or something, all wearing gym clothes and mat burns on their knees, a few with cauliflower ear. I tried to sort of sink into the group. I've always hated introducing myself. I nodded at some kid sitting on a gym bag, chewing a granola bar. He just looked away. Where are you from? Some other kid asked me. He had a big scab above his eye. Washington, I said. Washington, I heard someone else repeat, like he didn't know we even had the sport way out there. Larry Owings was from Washington. This kid with thick-rimmed glasses and hips like he wore a pool ring beneath his shirt. And he beat Dan Gable. Shut up, Barlow, the kid with the scab said. I didn't know where any of these kids were from, but it didn't matter. We were all going to get our asses kicked. Outside of the Caucasus and Iran, the best wrestlers in the world come out of Pennsylvania. I'd read that when piling up all the reasons I didn't want to go. Honestly, I'd been trying to find a way to quit for a while, but I just never did. I never spoke up, and now I was on the other side of the country for intensive camp, and I figured I was probably in too deep to quit. I wasn't only there because my coach thought it would get me to the next level. Things had just kept getting worse with my big sister. A few months back, my parents kicked her out of the house after they'd gone through all her things one night. And then she just showed back up like she'd been gone for that week on her own accord. No one knew what to do but pretend everything was normal. Sometimes I just catch myself looking at her like, what is happening to you? And if she caught me, she'd stare back until I broke and looked away. Neither of us enjoyed this. It wasn't long after my parents sat me down. It wasn't long after that my parents sat me down and told me they were shipping me off to Pennsylvania in the summer. My dad had printed out the camp flyer. He'd even highlighted parts of it. I talked to your coach all about it, he said. This will be great for you. I'd been getting these looks from my parents for some time that said to me, how do we keep you from becoming a problem? So I didn't protest the camp, but I also didn't agree to it. In fact, I was stockpiling like a conversational weapon. At home, everyone squeezed by one another like we all might be lepers. I eavesdropped on more conversations than I participated in. My parents kicked my sister out again 3 days before I left. I hadn't heard from her since, but then again, I couldn't really remember talking to her while she had been home. The guy who was supposed to shuttle us to camp waddled up. You could tell it was him because his face was round and flat as a pie plate, and he walked like he was carved out of wood. He also wore the camp t-shirt, Ray Euclid Gold Medal Intensive Camp. I thought the name was too long. I had no idea what Ray Euclid looked like, but I was sure this was not him. What the heck are you guys doing, he said. I circled the place 2 flippin' times. How am I supposed to know where you are? Outside of the van, we ran into trouble when we found out we had 2 more wrestlers than seats. I thought this could be my break. The shuttler stood there and said, "Shoot," a couple of times, then pointed at me and the next smallest kid and told us to get in the back with the bags. I lay on my back watching a couple of overpasses and a few treetops go by. Then nothing but the tops of semis, thinking, Jesus, Pennsylvania sucks, and thinking this must be what riding in a hearse is like. I asked the kid back there with me where he was from, and maybe he didn't hear me, but he didn't answer. So I just looked at the ceiling of the van and thought, things are going to get even worse than this. Then I thought about going home, and I didn't want to be there either. And I'll end on that sunny note. Thank you.